My anger and disappointment and frustration at UFC legend Charles Oliveira knows no bounds. As a Charles fan, it has never really been easy, to bear these losses, these recent losses, and as I'm sure it hasn't been easy to bear them for his other fans out there, but especially in this fight, this fight compared to like what he did against Arman Tsarukyan. I mean, come on. Like, I get that what Charles did in his fight against Ilya was basically what Charles Oliveira would have always done. But, how that fight went really makes you think Charles could have done way more to challenge Ilya in the least, Instead, he chose to just run at him, which was stupid, reckless. I'll acknowledge that it was brave, but I think it was overly brave to the point where it was just plain stupid, running at Ilya without any plan of picking him apart on the back foot, as the taller fighter should do. Instead, Charles just chose to take Ilya straight to Ilya's wheelhouse, and see what he can do there. Ilya did what Ilya does, and Charles saved Ilya a lot of headache in terms of like hunting him down. It was frustrating. It was just so frustrating, and it's just even more frustrating seeing what Charles has to say about it afterwards. Now, in one perspective, I understand that it really shouldn't be, because Charles has to explain himself, and it is obvious what he chose to do. But in another point of view, it's still just really upsetting, to see him say, "Oh, I should have did this, I should have did that," when it was like, you blatantly, man, it wasn't even like a whoopsie mistake, I forgot this sort of thing. It was just like, F all the stuff I trained for, F all the stuff I should do. I'm gonna run at this guy, and whatever happens, happens. Sort of like a Kevin Holland mentality or a Jalen Turner mentality, where you just don't fight smart, you fight dumb. Charles Oliveira fought dumb against Ilya. And I've said this before, but I just want to make this video to ultimately revisit it, especially given Charles's recent, recalling of his performance. He mentioned more about how he didn't remember anything after Ilya knocked him out. All the usual stuff people say when they get put on their face, after getting knocked out. But yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. It's upsetting, because I am a Charles fan. I'm a huge Charles fan. I love Charles. I love him mostly because of his demeanor, his personality, both inside and outside the octagon. Even inside the octagon, he is very courteous, very loving, very friendly. And even if a fight ended in a knockout in his favor, he would make sure his opponent was all right. That's what I love about Charles Oliveira. As a fighter, like from a pure fight IQ standpoint, I wouldn't have been a fan, if I had to, like, looking at Charles without his demeanor and his personality, and looking at the way he fights and his strategies, I wouldn't be a fan. I wouldn't, because it just, it's most of the time it's completely reliant on bravery and fearlessness and just jump at them and whatever happens, happens. But there are many ways to move smarter, prepare better. And Charles, as showed in this tweet, Charles actually broke down the fight well. His fight camp developed a good fight plan for him. Shoot the box style is really effective. Look at Ian Gary and how quick his body kicks has become. Charles could have did a lot. Especially off the back foot in his fight against Ilya. He could have done a lot. He could have made it way harder for Ilya. Maybe even won the whole thing. Who really knows? It's a what if now. Because more importantly, and where I want to go with you guys in this video, is toward the future with Charles Oliveira. Because I think after this performance, it's pretty safe to say Charles is never touching a lightweight title again. And he might come in, in a couple months and say that he's going on another run and he's gonna do it. He's not gonna give up. Brazilian pride, Brazilian strength. Charles, I'm Charles the Lion, Illuminado, illuminated by God. All the Charles stuff that he's going to say and that the fans are going to, post all over TikTok. But beyond all that, when you look at it from a realistic perspective, Is Charles Oliveira ever going to get past Arman Tsarukyan? Is Charles Oliveira ever going to get past Ilia Topuria? And would Charles Oliveira ever get past Paddy Pimblett? I don't think so. I think I think Charles obviously will not get through Arman or Ilia. But when you're considering Paddy the Baddy, I'm sure some people might say he will. I think he won't. Paddy's got a really good chin. If Charles was to get lucky in the pocket, I think Paddy would eat it, move forward, and I think Paddy outgrapples Charles. That might be a hot shot. That might be a hot take. I don't know, and I know a lot of people will continue to question my Charles Oliveira fandom or my liking of Charles Oliveira because of how doubtful I may be about him when considering how he fares against Paddy or Arman or Ilia. But the bottom line is I want to come at this with pure objectivity. I want to look at these things through an objective lens. And looking at Paddy Pimblett versus Charles through an objective lens, I think Paddy has Charles's number. I think Paddy does have Charles's number. I don't know if the two will cross paths. They might if Charles continues to stay in that upper group of the division, but Paddy's on his way up. He's probably going to fight for a title sometime soon. And I don't know. If Paddy does ever come to blows with Charles, then we'll see. But looking at this, from looking at the potential of this fight, I think Paddy would beat Charles, and I don't really think it would be close. So, just by saying that alone, again, it just kind of furthers my point that I really don't think Charles Oliveira will get close to a lightweight title ever again. And it's not necessarily a horrible thing because I like Charles and his legacy has been cemented. Charles, I think he's either close or does have the most finishes, either in his division or in the UFC in general. I forget which one, but Charles's legacy is cemented. He touched lightweight gold. He was an excellent lightweight champion. He did it, and he did it from the bottom. He started out unsuccessful in the UFC and turned it all around. So Charles is a legend. He is already a certified legend, beloved by many, if not all, MMA fans and UFC fans. He's done what he came to. He has done what he came to do. There's more he could do, but at the end of the day, his legacy is cemented. And if he was never to touch lightweight gold ever again, he's still one of the top lightweights and one of the top UFC fighters ever. Not top 10, obviously all time, not top 10, but still up there, And even if we're not, including him on the greatness scale, fight IQ wise or fight accomplishment wise, he is on the greatness scale fandom wise, and maybe greatness wise as well, but from a different, pivoting off of, fight IQ to just general greatness and personality and demeanor and, honor and likability, things like that. Charles is a noteworthy fighter, and he will continue to be noteworthy as long as the UFC is alive. Everybody loves Charles. Everybody loves them from Charles Oliveira. And I think that will be, that'll be the case for into the far future. So yeah, I like Charles. I love Charles. And if he never touches UFC gold again, his legacy is there. It's shining bright, and it will remain in the halls of the UFC Hall of Fame for decades, if not centuries. But overall, let me know what you think. I think that was Charles' last hurrah, and I think every fight involving Charles Oliveira going forward is maybe less of a legacy piece and more of a, just keeping my name out there, keeping the greatness going sort of piece. Not really more of a title run picture anymore. It's more so just trying to fight some pretty big names and, stay in the division for as long as I can. Maybe like Dustin Poirier is pretty much doing for his last fight. But overall, you let me know what you think. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and turn the notifications on. Most importantly, turn the notifications on. I love each and every one of you guys, and I'll see you all in the next video. I am Mr. Fight Companion from Glove Knowledge, and I'll see you all soon.